Hey everybody, Rob Nelson here to give you a quick tutorial on how to do a time-lapse, just a very simple time-lapse. Now, we're actually right now in the Amazon rainforest doing a moving time-lapse, so something that's kind of fancy, but time-lapses all have a few basic principles, and it's really important that you know a couple of main things to do every time you do a time-lapse. I'm just going to describe quickly what I'm doing right here and how I work with a time-lapse. So in this case, I have a camera and it's wired to a remote trigger. That's one really important thing to have, unless you have a camera that does internal time-lapse recording. So that's the first thing to figure out. Once you've gotten that far, then the next step is to figure out what settings to do on your camera. We're actually doing kind of a tricky time-lapse at the moment where we're doing the sun setting. Most of the time when you do a time-lapse, you're gonna be working with clouds moving or a flower opening, and the brightness is not going to change. So everything you shoot on the camera should be set to manual mode, and that is what I have on the camera right at the moment. So you're making sure that as a cloud goes over, it's not brightening or darkening the image. So manual aperture and manual on the shutter speed, and you also want to make sure you lock the ISO, which is the sensitivity of the camera. Any one of those can be automatically changed by the camera, and you want to make sure that doesn't happen because it will make a flickering shot and it just ruins the whole thing. The next thing you want to do is you want to make sure that your focus is locked. So manual focus always when you're doing a time lapse, because the camera has a tendency to go in and out of focus and it'll just totally mess things up. And one last thing, I think it's really important when you're doing a time lapse to experiment a little bit with the aperture, which controls the depth of field. In most of my time lapses, I keep a very large aperture. Just because, you know, in this case I have a tree in the foreground and I have a sunset in the background, and I don't really want one blurry over the other, so that's my preference. Those are things that you can experiment with though. It's just really important to make sure that your light levels are not being controlled by the camera. Okay. I hope that helps get you started in doing a time lapse. The next important piece is going and post-processing all of your images. All right, so you've come back from the field, and on one of these things you have all of these different pictures. Now it's really important to be able to know what to do to turn them into the moving image. I'm going to show you what I do. There's obviously a lot of different ways that you can do it, and I know that people have different programs, so I'm going to show you a few of the different ones that you can use and maybe a couple variations in case you don't have those programs. So, okay, I've already actually copied the images onto this. I'm going to show you one of the village time lapses that I took. Now, most of the editing programs are going to have a really hard time processing raw images. So because I took raw images, I'm first going to have to import them into Lightroom. So what I do is I open up Lightroom, I go over to my library. Over here in the lower left-hand section of folders, I say create new folder, and I'm going to add folder. And all I have to do is navigate to my pictures. It was my Village 3 time-lapse, and I say choose. And what it's going to do is it's going to open up, and it's going to say, do you want to import all of these? And I say yes, import them. So Lightroom has now imported all of these images, and you can see them along the bottom. So what I usually do is I hit Apple A, and I highlight all of them, and then I usually scan somewhere in the middle, and I just click on one of the images, and I go up to the Develop tab, and this will let me really quick work with a raw image. I want to show you why you shoot raw images. So if I was to shoot a JPEG image, it would look exactly like this. But because there's so much information raw, what I do is I will take the highlights, drop them down. That's the clouds and whatnot. And the shadows would be everything filled in, down in the trees and whatnot. I like to bump up the clarity because it gives a really neat look. And when that happens, you lose a little saturation, so I add some vibrancy to that. And then, just by doing that, it looks really, really neat. And for an added effect, sometimes I will put a little bit of a gradient on there, or in this case, maybe like a little circle gradient. So let's see here. Maybe something like that. So this is like a little circle gradient, but instead of increasing the exposure, which was the auto setting, I'll decrease it because this is a sky I want it to look intense, because the Amazon is pretty intense. And I'm going to add a little bit of, maybe just a teeny bit of orange to the tint, and the color temperature should be a little bit blue. And yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Now if you notice along the bottom, you can just see the mini thumbnail here, how different it is from the other images. But I have all of them selected and I'm just working with this one single image. So in Lightroom, you can go sync and then synchronize all of those different adjustments that we made. And it's going to work with every single one of them. It's just going to power through all of those. And then all you do is you go up here to File, Export, and then you choose a couple presets. One is I'm going to choose the folder where I want it. So let me just do a quick folder in the Amazon, and I'll just put it in the root so it's easier to look at. And I'm going to say time-lapse of houses. Time-lapse of house. And then create. And then I'm going to say that's where it's going to go. And then I'm going to come down here, I'm going to rename it just so I know what it is. Village House. Now, because I'm actually going to make a video in 1080p, I don't need the world's largest JPEG image. So for my editing program to be able to handle it, I'm just going to decrease the image and say the long edge of all of these, which is the horizontal edge, is going to be 2500 pixels wide. And yeah, that's the only things I change as I export it. And then I'll click export. And this process actually takes quite a while, especially when you've manipulated your images. And so I've actually already done this process. If you took a JPEG time-lapse, then now this is where you can start from. If you did RAW, you got to go through Lightroom or some other program that can, like APERATURE, to be able to change those images, export them out. It'll be a lot easier to work with them in an editing program. Okay, now in this case, there's two different ways you can go. Two different ways I like to go. I either go through After Effects when I do moving time lapses, or I just drop them right into Final Cut Pro, X in this case. Both of them are really easy. If you do Adobe Premiere, you can do that as well, but I won't be explaining that one right now. So if you do After Effects, I'll show you that, because I really like using After Effects. Composition, new composition. I just stick with the standard presets and I click OK. Okay, so now I'm just going to say Import Files, and I just navigate to where I had that, which was Amazon 2015. Okay, here's my images. It started with Community C-1. Those are all the JPEG sequences. And what you'll notice is down here I say click JPEG sequence, and it allows me to go ahead and make the whole thing a sequence, which is pretty cool. So I click open. Now it puts all of these different files into essentially one clip, and I just drag it down here into the timeline, and then there you go. That's the time lapse. Now, because these JPEG images were quite large, they're larger than our frame here, what we have to do is grab one of the corners and then click the shift button to keep the dimensions the same, and we scroll it on down, and then we just got to figure out what frame is, because the pictures are more of a square and the video is more of a rectangle. I think something like that works pretty well. And in this case, my composition size is pretty small. And then I'll okay, so then I go up to composition, add to render queue. I'm going to change where I put it to just straight onto my disk. Community Village. Save. Okay, and then just so you guys can see my output mode, I'm just going to show you this. I like to export as Apple ProRes 422, and of course it shows that it's a 1080p image, and I just say OK and render, and it's just going to go in the background, render it as a little movie clip, and you're done. Now let me show you one more easy way to do it, and that's through Final Cut Pro X. Okay, so you have Final Cut Pro open just like this. I went ahead and created a little library called Time-lapse, and I won't bother changing the names, but all you do is you import media. We just got to navigate to our time-lapse. In this case, I'm only going to import these JPEG images. So I'll scroll down and copy all of these. And then I'll say import selected. Now in my particular case here, I'm just going to leave the files in place because I think it will make the whole thing a little bit easier on my editing. I just import them just like so. Okay, so we have them all here in the event. All we have to do is make a project. So we'll call this Village. And I'm going to need video custom properties at 1080p. You can change this to obviously to whatever you want. I'll just say 30p because I think that makes the most sense for me. All you have to do
is click on the very first image, drag down, and highlight the last image, and I will drag them into the timeline down here. Now a lot of people will go ahead and change the standard duration of clips that you bring in before you do this. I don't like to do that, and the reason I don't like to do that is then you're having to constantly go to the preferences, because it really is not all that difficult. Once you've brought them down in there, you actually have them all highlighted anyway. So I just control click on them and I say change duration right here. Once you click that, you see it makes this whole section blue, and what you're going to do is you're just going to hit the number 1, and it says 1 frame. That's it. Don't hit any more numbers, and then hit enter, and it shrinks everything down. And while everything is still highlighted, control click and say make new compound clip, and OK. Now what you'll notice is it's basically creating a little clip that is now that whole time lapse. And if you also notice, it is square, and so you have these black edges. So the really easy way to go about changing that is you just go up here, click that little transform tool, grab one of the edges, increase the size, and voila! There is your time lapse, and it's already actually it renders pretty nicely right there in the timeline, and you can start editing right away. Okay, I hope that helped. Obviously, there's a lot of other ways that you can do it. If you have a preferred method, leave it in the comment section below, because it will help everyone else out. Not everybody has these particular programs, although I highly recommend these. Adobe Premiere is also really good at that. You'll have to look for a tutorial, though, if you're using that program. Good luck with your time lapses. I hope that you have great success. They're really one of my favorite things to do. Here are some other videos that I did, other tutorials on time lapses that you might find enjoyable. Also, I just finished a book on how to do science filmmaking. Check that out, links in the description. And of course, you can subscribe for more videos just like this.
Hey everybody, today I'm going to talk about macro filmmaking. That's taking video of very, very tiny things. Today we're going to give you some tips about flying drones. Seems like everybody's got a drone now, but you got to know how to fly it if you're going to get some awesome shots.